everybody, welcome back. We are going to begin Unit 5, nth roots, radicals, and rational exponents. All right. We're going to start off by kind of checking this out a little bit. So the graph is y equals x squared. Okay, and you know that the square and square root kind of undo each other. Okay, so for each of these coordinates, we're going to kind of investigate something. So if I have 2, we look up here and find out, well, what is 2 squared? And 2 squared is 4, right? Well, what's the square root of 4 as we come down here and we find it's 2. Okay, so it kind of goes back and forth. Look at B, this is going to be 4, sorry. And so look at B is 3. And so over here at 3, what's 3 squared? And we come up here and 3 squared is 9, right? Well, if we said what's the square root of 9, we come up here to the graph and go backwards and say it's going to be 3. So, okay, this is 9, and then the root of 9 is 3. What about negative 3? Okay, negative 3 squared is also actually 9. And so that means that if we take the square root of 9, we could also have a negative 3, right? Let's go over here at negative 6. Well, so let's go to 4 right here. So what it's saying is here is for the value of y is 4. So when I'm on the graph at 4, up here, let's say at 4 right here, right? What is the value of x? Well, that's called the square root. This is going to be 2, right? Also, what about negative 16? Well, notice there's no value for y that's negative 16. That would be down here, right? And so there's no square root for a negative number, for negative 16, because notice all my values of y are in the positive quadrants. Okay, so there's no square root of 16. Okay, so let's look at the cubic graph function, right? We do have a square root of a negative 5, so come down here to negative 5. What is the square root of negative 5? It's negative 2 point something. There is a value for a negative cube root there, right? Cube root of 8. I don't know what's going on there. Cube root of 8. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's happening to my pen right now. Oh gracious. Let's go back here. Cube root of 8. So if I come up here to 8, right here, if I come down here, my cube root of 8 is 2. Okay. So that's just kind of like give you a little visual for what we're talking about with roots. Okay, roots and cube roots. Here's also a table. And you might want to write this table down or something, but in all these highlighted areas, you might want to spend some time being really comfortable recognizing what is this, n squared is, 2 squared is 4, square root of 4 is 2. All the square roots up to 15, and then also 20, of course, is 400, right? So you should know pretty quickly that, the square root of 12, or the 12 squared is 144, and that 13 squared is 169. And so therefore, the square root of 169 is 13. Being able to just recognize these square roots and the perfect cube roots. Now, of course, all this highlighted area here, I would say the cubes I would probably know up to about 6, right? Probably up here somewhere to about 6. And then my fourth roots, I'd probably know all of these guys, actually, all up there, okay? Just to kind of be very comfortable with those, okay? So let's get started here. So what are all the real cube roots of 125, okay? So what it's basically saying here is if I were to say, x cubed is actually 125, what are the cube roots of that guy? Okay, so remember, I can kind of look at it like I'm solving it, right? So this is essentially saying x cubed minus 125 equals 0. And this should look familiar when we used to solve for these guys. I could factor this into x minus 5. That's a difference of 2 cubes. You remember that, where we had x cubed minus 5 cubed equals 0, right? So I could factor that into x minus 5 times x squared plus 5 times x, and then plus 25 equals 0. Well, this one is a real solution. It's x equals 5, right? This one, there's no factors of 25 to add up to 5. So this is going to yield us 2 imaginary solutions. So this is real, right? This is going to be 2 imaginary solutions. If I plug this into the quadratic formula, it's going to give me imaginary solutions. I'm not going to do that right now. You're just going to have to trust me, okay? So this is our only real solution. If you recall back to our polynomial section, if I have a power of 3, I'm going to have either all 3 real solutions, or I'm going to have 1 real and 2 imaginary, okay? In this case, I'm all my cube roots, I only have 1 solution. Anytime I have an odd cube root, I'm going to have 1 real solution, okay? On the other hand, if I have this one here, this fourth roots, so in other words, I'm saying x to the fourth equals 16, what are the roots of that guy? So if I subtract 16, I'd end up with x to the fourth minus 16 equals 0. And I can factor this guy, right? This is a difference of two squares. So this would be x squared minus 4. The square root of x to the fourth is x squared. The square root of 16 is 4. And x squared plus 4 equals 0. Now this one would end up being, again, imaginary, right? Because if I subtract 4, I'll end up with a negative radical. But this guy right here, I can factor to x plus 2, x minus 2. And so that would end up being x equals 2 and negative 2. So I end up with two roots, right? Negative 2 to the fourth power is 16 and positive 2 to the fourth power is 16. So I have to be careful whenever I'm talking to even roots. Square roots, fourth roots, sixth roots, any roots, I'm always going to have those two solutions. And that's why when we take the square root, we have to do plus and minus, right? When I'm doing cube roots, any odd roots, fifth roots, seven roots, I'll only have one, okay, one real root. So just kind of keep in mind here that 2 to the fourth is 16 and negative 2 to the fourth is 16. So both of these are roots of 16. There's no real roots, so that x to the fourth equals negative 16, because if I plug any negative number in there, it's not going to give me a negative number ever. Okay, so negative 16 has no real roots. Negative 5 is the only cube root for negative 125, because it's the only one, when you cube it, will give me a negative 125. Okay? Some roots, like the square root of 10, are irrational numbers, but they do have positive and negative square roots. Okay, so they still have square roots. So then let's look at the actual nth root. Okay, so now normally, like back in geometry, you guys dealt with mostly square roots, but we actually have cube roots and fourth roots and 10th roots and so forth. This is the index number right here, so that's where it's going to tell you, is it a square root or a cube root? If it's a square root, we don't put 2's there. If it just has no number there, you know it's a square root. If there's a 3 here, then that's going to be a cube root. Okay, this is my radical, this is my radicand, and we now start writing this many times in a rational form, in rational exponents. Okay. This guy on top always ends up being my power, and I always think that the power comes from the sun, and this down here is my root, like the roots go to the ground. Okay, so that's how I always remember that. That's where my root's going to be, and up here is my powers. Okay, so let's look at here. So find the specified roots of each number. So remember, this is an even root, so I'm going to have 2 of them, right? So the real fourth roots of 81. So it's a fourth root, so you have to think what multiplied by itself 4 times is going to give me 81. And if you look back at your old chart, that's going to be 3 and negative 3. Okay. How about find the real cube roots of negative 343? So if we go back to our little chart here, if you look back at a cube root, 343 right here, it's going to be 7. 7 times 7 times 7 is what 343 is. And since it's a cube root, there's only one real solution, and that is negative 7. Okay, because it's a negative, it's going to be a negative root. Okay, negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49, and then positive 49 times negative 7 gives me negative 343. Real cube root of 64, again, it's just going to be one root, so it's going to be positive 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. And then what's a real cube root of negative 64 is going to be negative 4. Okay? All right, so now let's kind of get on into here. We're going to start evaluating these expressions. So now we have a rational exponent. So remember, up here is always going to be my power on the top, and this one is going to always be my root. Okay, so what I like to look at is look at the bottom first, because if I can take the fifth root of 32, that's going to be better than trying to take the fifth root of 32's cubed. That's going to be a huge number. Okay. So the fifth root of 32 is 2, right? 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So you can look at it like this. I'm going to go 32 to the fifth root first, like that. And then I'm going to cube it. Okay? So 32 to the fifth root of 32 is 2. And cubed, and then 2 cubed is 8. Try not to do these with your calculators. I really want you to try to do these mentally in your head first, okay? This is a negative 2/3, okay? So we can flip that upside down and go 1 over 27 to the 2/3. And again, what's a cube root of 27 is 3. So I'm going to go 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 9. Okay? Now 50 is tricky because there's no fourth root for 50. So sometimes you actually have to use your calculator. And this is where I'm going to show you how to use your calculator. All right, so I want you to try not to use a calculator when you can, but sometimes you're going to have to. This little caret button is what helps us use rational numbers, okay? So I'm going to go 50, and there's this little caret button right here that goes boop, like that, and that's what makes it go up in the top. And then I'm going to always have to put parentheses, because you want to make sure you put parentheses so it knows that it's all this number is in the power. So I'm going to take 3 divided by 4 to make it 3/4. Close my parentheses, so now I have 50 to the 3/4 right here, okay? Enter. And that's about 18.8, okay? So this is going to be approximately, right here, 18.8, okay? And there you go. I will let you know the times when, well, no, I won't. So about 18.8. Now, sometimes in your calculators, you might have to do there's a button that might look like this, a square root to the x like that. And so you have to watch out for that. But you might also see something like, you know, if you can't figure it out on your calculator, maybe Zoom me and I'll see if we can help you figure it out, okay? Okay, so now we're gonna look at just evaluating these guys. So the fajita rating scale F of a tornado, that's the F rating, F scale, is represented by this equation here, where W is the estimated wind speed of the tornado in miles per hour. So what is the fajita scale rating of a tornado with estimated 100 mile per hour winds? We just basically plug 100 into that W, and we start evaluating. So we're going to take that, first of all, 100 divided by 14.1, and that's going to, oh no, actually, I'm sorry. First, we're going to actually convert this 2 into a rational power. So 2 divided by 3. So notice that radical here, the radicand goes to the root, and my power stays on top. Now we're going to take our 100 divided by 14.1. That's going to give us about 7.09 to the 2/3 minus 2. This, we're going to put this in our calculator, 7.09 to the 2/3. It's going to give us 3.69 minus 2, and then we have 1.69. So that's going to be an F scale of about 1.69. Okay? All right, so one more thing here. What is the value of each expression? I want you guys to maybe try this and then come back and see how you do. This first one here is tricky because the negative, notice, is on the outside. So you want to ignore that until the very end. We want to take the 16 to the 3/4 first. So the fourth root of 16 is going to be 2 cubed, right? We got 2 cubed here. Keep that negative on the outside. And then 2 cubed is 8. And then we bring in that negative. So it's actually -8. Okay, so be careful with those negatives if they're inside the radical or inside the parentheses or not. Like this one over here is -27. And I'm going to go ahead and write this as 2/3. Okay. And then I'm going to actually take the cube root of -27. And that's going to be -3 squared, which is now +9. Okay. Okay, so you have an Excel and Google Classroom, and make sure you show. There's some of them you're not going to have a lot of work on, so just make sure you write your answer down. But then there's some of them you will have quite a bit of work on, and I want to see that. Okay, and then I will see you all next in Zoom. Take care. Bye bye.